Aloha, ano ai me ke aloha, aloha kako, mai hai a lehua, aloha, mai oa o ke pai ʻāina ai, ke na ʻāina mo ka puni honu, me na ohana e waihua na malaila, aloha, aloha, aloha. Um, Aloha, my name is Puni, and I'm so grateful to be invited to speak with you today, and to share some stories. It's a little bit like the heroes, I'm fangirling for all of the heroes that were my librarians over the course of my life. And so I'm really grateful to be here with all of you. And if it's okay, I would like to open with a pule for this place. I'm speaking from the back of Kalihi Valley, Kalihiuka, and to honor Haumea and Kapo, if I might offer leo pule for our opening. O nā lehua wale I ka ana ke kuia e laua lana helei no ka wahine o ka pōpō ki li inui o I moku. Ki e klau ka ike he ike kumu he ike lono he ike pū awahiwa he ike a kua I lono oi. Okay, mahalo everybody. Now I feel like we're here. I'm gonna go ahead and open my slide deck so we can enjoy an image, and you can focus on the beautiful background of Kalihi Valley. This photo was taken by one of our resident staff members, community members, kupuna photographer. Her name is Ka'ohua Lucas, and I'm very proud that she took the time to stick her head out of a helicopter to get this shot for us. I'm speaking from Kalihi Valley, from this back of this valley, and this place is known cosmologically, historically, as the place of Haumea, the ʻāina of Haumea, this place of woman, this place of akua and of mana, and also a place of challenging. And so I'm grateful to be able to speak about identity within the context of this conference, because the Hawaii Library system has really shaped my own identity. And so I hope to share a little bit of my story and how I came to be so pili to Kalihi Valley. Kalihi Valley, Kokua Kalihi Valley is our bigger context. Let's see if I can slide. Okay, there you go. Ho'olu ʻāina is the program, a program of Kokua Kalihi Valley. And just so we kind of know a little bit, Kokua Kalihi Valley Comprehensive Family Services is a federally qualified health center. We have doctors and medical practitioners. We have behavioral health, but we also have a lot of community-based programming, including a tennis program, a very robust elder program. And my particular kuleana is in the back of the valley on this 100 acres, a place and a program called Ho'olu ʻāina. And this person here, her name is Nalani. She's fierce, a carver and a farmer and a forester and a welder, and just a beautiful holder of space. And I think that that's kind of the main thing that I wanted to talk about today, is that our kuleana in our identity really makes us, it's important for us always, not just to hold space, to make space. And that's what Ho'olu ʻāina means, to create land, to grow because of the land. And I'm grateful for that context of the federally qualified health center, because we have the ancestral context of Haumea. We have that cosmological context of ʻāina and kai and lani. But to have that systemic context also is very powerful, that we might hold hands in a circle in the forest and understand clearly that as we introduce ourselves, who we are, the land we come from, and the ancestors we come from, that is health. That is how we become healthy as individuals, and it's how we become healthy and whole as a community. And throughout the next 45 minutes to an hour, I hope to share some stories from this program and this ʻāina, but also from my own upbringing. And I'm actually not that I don't normally do that, but I thought it would be right for this context of the conference. And I really want to say I'm excited that your conference has invited the conversation around identity in a way that is going to uplift not just our society, but those who see us as models and leaders. And so I want to recontextualize one more time, not just Kalihi Valley, not just ʻāina, not just the FQHC, not just the library systems, but Hawaii in our independence, in our historic foundations, in this broad pai'aina, but also the honua. I think it's so important to recognize that ʻāina and the way that this ʻāina of Hawaii has shaped myself and many of us on this call, and those who we call our teachers, our elders, our kupuna, our kumu, that Hawaii is kuʻukilohana. Hawaii is my deepest, my strongest, my most precious context for my identity. And I would love to be able to know that the work that I have done here at ʻāina and in my own life has made that identity welcoming and available and strong for those that I have touched. The name of this particular talk I borrowed from Navahi, who said this, "Owai la ko makuahine o ka ʻāina no. Owai la ko kupuna wahine o ka ʻāina no." And this is, who is your mother? It is the ʻāina. Who is your grandmother? It is the ʻāina. So this ʻāina, she is our mother. She is our grandmother. And it's almost, it's a reciprocal concept. It's important for us to understand ʻāina is not just land. It is that which feeds. It's all of us. It's all of our family. And I'm learning to refer to that concept of ʻāina with her proper pronouns. But in my own language, her pronoun is oia. Yeah. So thinking about what motherhood looks like, this idea that the ʻāina is our mother, the ʻāina is our grandmother, and she loves us. It's important that I understand my own upbringing in that context. And I wanted to share a little bit about my growing up, and I hope that that would make sense for you all. I grew up with a beautiful mother. My own mother is one of those ideal moms who kind of like really resourced every idea that I might have had. And that sense of wholeness for me was part of my childhood. And this is not a picture of me at all. This is a picture of a little girl named Kapiko Kalani, and she is a fierce little one. And this is her Auntie Jane. She's learning about all of the va'a. And this sense of like getting down to her level, telling stories, having her connect to ʻāina and kai and community, that's the context of wholeness that was my own childhood that I grew up in. But I didn't grow up around hokule'a, obviously. I didn't grow up speaking Hawaiian. I didn't grow up, I grew up regular, as my friend Kau'i Sang likes to say. I just was regular. I had an attending father who took us surfing, and we picked limu often. I was close to the ocean. My mom was one of those nurturing persons who drove everybody to school and everybody home. And our home was one of those foundational spaces in our community where families and individuals came in to eat, to stay, as a place of refuge sometimes, and refuge. Oh, I guess refuge. That's funny. Refuge. That was our living room was home to many, many families as they came in and out. And even as I understood my own sense of nurturing and wholeness, it was very clear to me from a very young age that that sense of belonging, nurturing, and safety was not experienced by all people. And it was my kuleana, my responsibility to make sure that that sense of connection, that sense of relationship, that was afforded and shared with other people. And it was really my grandmother, her name is Josephine Manuai. it was my grandmother who had this really intense commitment to being intentional around identity. She said every single day she had these beautiful quotes. She would say, you are a sum total of all you have experienced. She would say, what you are is God's gift to you, and what you become is your gift to God. And so it was this sense of she quoted all different kinds of, definitely there was the Shakespearean to be or not to be feelings in her quotes, but there was always this mindfulness around identity, and that identity always had to do with connection. And so at Ho'olu'aina and in Kalihi and in our work here in the back of the valley, we make sure that we are making the efforts to try to create that sense, create that world, build and give birth to the sense of safety, those cultural spaces, those family spaces, those spaces where you could be an individual and that your special gifts might be able to thrive. And in this, I love this photo. This is my handsome husband being with his body, the safe space for this young person whose name is Paliku, who wants to be a carver. And he's a gifted carver. He's very strong in his mind and in his passion. But in this photo, he was just learning how to carve. And so the arms of the uncle, the arms of the kumu, is that safe space for him so that he can be able to articulate with the gift that he holds. In my own childhood, it was the library that was that safe space for me. And so my mom would often take me I went to what we've called library school in my family, but I think it had an actual different name. And my teacher when I was young, her name was Mrs. Freitas. And I went to, Eva Beach Library. I lived in Eva Beach, and I would climb the fence over, this is so silly, I would walk from my house and climb the fence to get to the library. It was so important. And as I was growing up, it was such that important safe space, that kind of warm, and I don't know what it looks like now, but it was this kind of orange color of the slide that we see here. It was this warm sense of connection. It was a round room for the children, and I always felt safe. And so it was my first place that I ever went to by myself without my mom or my family. It was that safe space that I went to meet family members or to meet friends. But like I said, I knew from my own experience and from my own observation that sense of nurturing and wholeness and foundation, that warmth, was not always experienced by all of the families around me. And also for myself, I had this deep sadness, this lack of connection that I'm sure that many youth growing up in Hawaii felt. And so I thought I'd share, these are two different lyrics from Skippy Ioane, our great poet and songwriter. When he writes, what I cannot find is the ʻāina that used to live inside of me. I feel like I remember that so clearly as a child, especially when I was on ʻāina, especially when I was in the kai by myself. And then this idea of ua lava the stones, we on Tutu's bones, ʻāina underneath our feet. So I feel like as a child and as I grew up, that sense of deep connection to ʻāina was familial. And not everybody has that experience, but for myself, and especially for Native Hawaiians, and especially for the kumu and the kupuna who have taught me over the years, feeling that familial connection to ʻāina is something that is very sacred and important. And it's our gift, but it's also our gift to share and to bring forward. And so at Ho'olu'aina in our programming, this little one, his name is Paulila'a. It's our important task to be able to find the opportunities for young ones with their families to be on ʻāina, to make those connections again, to feel that sense of safety, to feel those cultural experiences that help those gifts to be ignited. When I first started my work here in the back of Kalihi Valley, I had this thought of how many carvers had lived in this valley. of every different culture of Hawaiian, Samoan, Chukis, Filipino, Tongan, all of our cousins and families from across the ocean and beyond. How many carvers had lived in my valley but never picked up an adze, never had the chance to ignite that gift within them. And I think that's true of farmers, that's true of sailors, of all the different ways in which our stories over time, sometimes they've been forgotten, or sometimes they've uplifted a power and a value that is that wanes away, that moves away from that core, deep, familial connection to ʻāina, and especially as ʻāina as mother, as makuahine. And so in our programming, we have one little program called Maiuka Ku'uwa'a, and it means my canoe comes from the uplands. And this little one is one of, I think we have 200 people in that program right now. And so my goal is that eventually it's not a program, eventually it's just feelings, it's just connection, it's just family, it's just society, it's community. But Maiuka Ku'uwa'a teaches us that that our canoe comes from the uplands, and if we want to sail, we want to navigate, we want to be in the ocean, we want to ignite the learning and understanding and values that our kupuna left for us in this world, that we have to start from the furthest upland place. And so I think in this photo, Poli might be 6 years old. He is demonstrating his knot tying, which is really great. And we all know from neuroscience that the tying of the knots is tying not just knots, it's also making those connections in our little brains. But Poli is also a skilled carver already. And so already he knows, he's already farmed, he's already been in the forest, he's already understood every aspect of native learning that makes up a society that creates our world. And he knows and demonstrates regularly that it's his job to make space for the next one, to make space in the circle, to acknowledge those in the circle, that his identity, and I don't know if you could read it on his shirt. His shirt, at the top of his shirt says, Ua'ake kukui. Ua'ake kukui. So when they ask permission to enter the hale, the response from the kumu is Ua'ake kukui, because it's our job to turn on those lights. Yeah, and then the passion and the excitement and the gifts of the young one, the connection within community, that's what turns on that force. And myself as a child, I'm sort of a dorky child. And so those turning on of the lights happened for me in books and in reading and being in library spaces, being in academic spaces. And it wasn't until I was much older, I'd say in my 20s. Yeah, I was much older. Even though I knew and I grew up in the ocean, it wasn't until my 20s that I really felt like, oh, cleaning grandma's yard with the machete, and then clearing forests, clearing, invasive species for ʻāina and for growing land, growing community, growing space for native knowledge. It wasn't until my 20s that I really made those connections. Even though I could feel it, so that sense of that connection, I could feel it. There was the ha, that breath of the ʻāina was there. But in my cognitive sense, it was really only through the learning of other stories, of other people's stories, especially other Native Hawaiian stories, that helped me to understand my kuleana and my gifts. And so that sense of sovereignty, I spent, gosh, I wonder how. There must be a record of how many times I checked out the book Nama Na'o Aloha o ka Ho'olave from the upstairs Hawaiian collection at Kamehameha Schools. And I spent many, many hours there. I was particularly interested in reading through hearings, and I remember carrying around a document of Punani Burgess and her husband about sovereignty. And I felt like I was thinking about sovereignty. I was dreaming of sovereignty in a way that I didn't see any adults around me living. that there were people on TV that I thought they were maybe pushing forward, but mostly fighting. There were people that I remember being in their homes, on their farms, in their space, and I remember feeling like this is it. But it wasn't until really reading the words of George Helm that I could feel that deep connection between ʻāina as our mother and our kuleana to feed forward and to feed back, to make sure that we're making more abundance for those generations to come, but also that we're being accountable to those generations who sacrificed for us to be here. And I think I was, how old was I? Might have been in the 10th grade when the newspaper came out that Kaho'olawe was not to be bombed anymore. And that was that was healing for me in a way that I didn't even realize had been painful. That my childhood observation of the news and the anger that especially those on Maui were expressing, that it wasn't okay that our kanaloa was being bombed, that it wasn't okay that our sacred spaces were not being honored. And I was very young when I remembered meeting it was my grandfather's doctor, Kikuhi. Kikuhi Blaisdell was my grandfather's doctor. I just thought he was my grandfather's doctor. I didn't know he was also this amazing activist. And I remember having these first conversations, Moʻolelo Hawaii. I was new to ʻōlelo, and he was so gracious and so generous to make space for a young person and a young mind to explore what I was seeing for the first time in an elder, in an uncle, in a person in my community who thought like me that this was not okay and that it was my responsibility to make something different. And so I made some things different. And I found some people who thought like me. And I love this image also by Ka'ahua Lucas. This going back to the essence of Bai, making sure that we're honoring Haumea in her abundance. We're honoring Kanaloa in her abundance. We're honoring Kane in his abundance. We're honoring Lono and our kuleana to make abundance in this beautiful season of Lono. And so, was it? I think it was 17 years ago. So 17 years ago, I came to the back of the valley, and my husband and I don't think we were married at the time. We had lived in a new home, in a new rental space every year, every 6 months, every 9 months or whatever, for every year that we were together. And we kind of moved and moved and moved, and we moved all our plants. We moved all our plants and our shade houses, and we came to this back of this valley. And if you've been to Holu ʻāina, it feels like this welcoming space of refuge, because we really, really wanted myself and my husband and our other advocates who were in those tiny circles at the time, Solomon Enos, David DeRoff, those were these, Mark Hamamoto. Our circles were quite small, but we built this ʻāina to be that welcoming place, to be that place of refuge, to be that remembering that that I had from my own childhood, and that we were blessed to have in our own upbringing, that sense of nurturing. And in our circles, I learned to talk about and to ask and to prompt and to invite people to tell the stories of their own ancestors, their spaces of safety, their spaces of nurturing, those moments of when they understood their own gifts and they understood how their gifts tied to their kuleana. And what I learned was that sense of agency, that deep essence of agency, that commitment to sovereignty, and that's personal, ʻāina, community, political sovereignty, that was not enough. even if we had an understanding of our wholeness, even if we understood the obstacles of our disruption against which we pushed, even if we came into our own empowerment with our power, with our voice, with each other, with the advocacy and intelligence and the academic training that we all came from, it was not enough. And so I thought, I mean, it's a lot though, but it's not enough. And so I thought, and we learned, and I observed the importance of going back to the most basic essence, vai. And this is a picture of my own opu, my 5th child being born. I'm actually in labor in this photo. And this vai, to understand that we are vai. It is not enough that we come to ʻāina as our mother for her to feed us. It's more that we understand that the vai that is all around us, that is actually falling from the sky right outside this window right now, this ko'ilipi rain. It's not enough that we drink of it. We must understand that we are vai. We are made of vai. We are born in vai. Vai is our first home. That this sense that our mothers, our ʻāina, that is what feeds us. We also are made up of those elements. And so it wouldn't be smart or wise or pono for me to quote 3 academic men, activist men from our history, without also acknowledging this beautiful, powerful voice of Haumea herself. O kokolo ke ai polo. O pukamaka ke aulo o oko ikapo wau nei te ao. E ho'olono u lono anai. This pule, this oli, these are the first 5 lines. Actually, I think it's 4 lines in how it's written in the newspaper, but those who chant can see that it's 5. But we're calling for water. We're calling for the vai. In the story of Haumea, when she transforms herself into the ulu, and she saves her beloved Wakea from being put into the imu and rescues him, pulls him into the ulu tree as his saving space. When they exit the ulu tree, they're falling down a waterfall. This magical, heroic, epic tale. Part of this tale, it includes this chant where Haumea is ready to have an awa ceremony. And she goes to Kaliu, who lives in Waolani, and says, I'm ready for an awa ceremony because I need to save Wakea. I'm going to go and do this great feat. Bring me the vai, bring me the awa. And Kaliu says, I don't have awa. I mean, I have awa, but I don't have vai. And so she does this chant and calls to her ancestors. She calls to all of her ancestors to say, I need your help. I need you to hear me. I need to hear you. Ho'olono. I need this listening between us to happen. And she starts that by saying that I'm reaching like roots into the pole, into that dark space, to be born into the ao, into this bright space. You guys, all my ancestors, you guys is in the pole. Oau nela ikeao. I'm over here in the ao. And I love this chant because I know that sense of loneliness that comes sometimes when you really need to reach out, reach into the pole for your ancestors, when something is ready to be born, when your own gifts are ready to be born, when your own kuleana are ready to be born. There's a loneliness, there's that quietness. And it's interesting because we talk about being in the po, but actually we're in the ao, we're in the light, we're in the day, in the dawn. And it's our kuleana to reach into the po, into the darkness, like the rootlets that are our genealogies, and to ask for that listening and to listen deeply. And so Haumea is, she's really smart. She's brought this down for us to be able to follow. And how do we follow? It's hard to follow when you listen, you're following, but it's hard to follow. It's not easy to follow. It takes great faith. It takes deep listening. It takes being vulnerable. It takes trying things that you've not tried before. When I came to Horu ʻāina, I lived in the forest without water, with puka in the roof, puka in the ground. We slept with our saws. I had to listen. I didn't know very many plants even. I knew taro varieties. I knew our own foods, our own Hawaiian foods, but I didn't know what it took to be able to collaboratively build Ho'olu ʻāina into the safe and cultural and growing space that it is, this inspiring space. I was really needing to go to that beginning space of learning. And so I love this photo of Jane, who we saw earlier in the slide deck. This is Jane. I think this might be Jane's first ceremony. And Auntie Ka'ohua has captured this face so beautifully. She's preparing for a ceremony. She's preparing for a ceremony that is starting for us very soon. And that's Keala Polohiwa Kanaloa, to honor Kanaloa also again in this speech, in this talk. And the winter solstice is, I didn't grow up. I grew up regular. Nobody was talking about winter solstice except for Little Bear. Little Bear was my only winter solstice example. But little Bear, it was, and then eventually I learned that my own family, my own ancestors, my own ʻāina, my own community, my own vai, my own uka, and my own kai required me to listen deeply, so that on the winter solstice, I might not only give honor to that listening that Haumea set forth for us, but I might also lead others and gently and forgivingly and simply lead people in this community to their best selves, to their strongest self, and find that place for myself too. And I might have been born into difficulty, but then found wholeness in my childhood. I might have been born into wholeness and found difficulty and disruption in my upbringing. I might have found my sovereignty and my agency in my learning and my growing. But it's through ceremony that we actually come back home to our collective wholeness. And I love that we are growing and learning community, learning to set the ahu, learning to set the ho'okupu. Let's see how much time I have left. Karina, will you tell me some numbers when I have to shut up? Good. I do have enough time to share this story. We've been doing ceremony here in the back of Kalihi Valley for, oh gosh, my husband is 16, so 16 years, 15 or 16 years. And it started very simply. And the pule that I started this talk with is a pule ya kapo. Now, kapo is the name of the ʻāina that is most uka in the valley of Kalihi. So in the upmost part of Kalihi is the ʻāina kapo, and that is a sacred ʻāina. It's kapu. Kapo is also the name of the ancestor deity who is part of our kuleana, to make sure that kapo's energy, that they are part of the growth of the forest, the growth of community, that kapo is present in hula. But it's a complex relationship if you didn't grow up. It's really a deep listening that takes place. But in that pule, I love that pule that was gifted to us on this land by Auntie Pua Kanahele, that she asked for us to carry this pule. And I love that pule because in the pule it says kie kie ha'a ha'a. And you know, if you don't know the chant, even, you know, we're all circled around and trying to find the chants from time to time. That line of the chant, kie kie ha'a ha'a, you can remember it. That which is very high and that which is very low. And everyone in my upbringing, in kind of my younger adult years around ceremony, especially around hula, everybody was really aiming for high ceremony. Kie kie was what we were aiming for. But not till I came to Kapo and to Kalihi and to Haumea, into this space, that I realized and understood the power and importance of ha'aha'a from the ground, that low ceremony, that foundational, that broad ceremony, because ki'e ki'e is narrow and ha'aha'a is laula, right? Ki'e ki'e is, I can't remember what language I spoke, but ki'e, high is narrow and low is broad, is what our ancestral chants teach us. And when you're able to be that nurturing energy, when you're able to create that safe space for someone to try for the first time, to be their best self for the first time, which is what I experienced as a child growing up and as a learner. But I also experienced the other side of that, when people, teachers especially, elders, people who are hurt, that they might feel that sense of insecurity that they pass down to those that they're responsible for. And so then there's no longer that courage to be vulnerable. There's no longer that commitment to be able to grow not only oneself, but one's other community. That it's only when we're able to go to the most foundational that we see that ceremony starts with our birth and ends with our death. And in this image, I love to share that this person who is the most close to us, her name is Maya. She just had her very first baby, this within the last week. And so she's a mother for the first time. And this circle of ceremony and life and community and sharing, that is what we're meant to create. We might create programs, we might create buildings, we might create systems, we might write a grant, we might do some deliverables, but none of that is going to be more important than the circle that we hold. We might even make a difference, whereas on some document in some legislation is going to really change how resources are honored in our society. But more important is that we can come home to ourselves. More important, most important, foundationally, on the lowest level, important is that our ceremonies are in place for each other and for those to come. Mahalo so much for inviting me to talk. I'm really, really grateful and just absolutely humbled to share these special stories with you all. I hope that you visit our space here in the back of Kalihi Valley and visit our website, ho'olu'aina. You could do .com or .org, it both works. But sharing stories on our website and sharing stories with one another, I love, love, love to keep this conversation going. Mahalo so much for the invitation. Aloha.